welcome everybody to Real People Media's Meet the Author with Kagan Goh. He's our virtual artist in residence for 2022 and our first virtual artist in residence. And this project is part of our Building Bridges series. And we hope to bring stories to light that other people may not normally share. So this is a new series for us, and it's made possible with support from the Michigan Humanities Building Bridges grant. So welcome, Kagan, to our first series. And we might have some kinks to work out. And I know you from your early days as a film student years ago. So you are a filmmaker, you are a poet, an author. What else would you like to share about yourself, as a general introduction? You're Canadian.
Yeah. I'm a Singapore-born BIPOC Chinese-Canadian multidisciplinary artist, award-winning filmmaker, published author, spoken word, poet, playwright, actor, mental health advocate, and activist. And today we're going to be talking about two things. One is my short 7-minute and 26-second film, The Day My Cat Saved My Life. And my latest book, my second book, Surviving Samsara. And the log line is a memoir of breakdowns, breakthroughs, and mental illness. Published by Caitlin Press. So Rebecca, nice to see you. Thank you so much for this honor to be featured as the first virtual artist in residence at the center. And I'm pretty excited about this, yeah.
And as well as having the virtual discussions with you, we are also going to we're putting up an exhibit called My Story, where your book will be featured as well as your photography. So we have that will be at the Keweenaw Storytelling Center. So it's everything. You're a multimedia artist, so we're doing everything. And you have such a diverse, this story, Surviving Samsara, is your personal, your very personal story. And thank you for sharing it, because it's a subject that, I think a lot of people that live with bipolar disorder or another mental illness might not want to share readily. And I think that comes from reading the book as well. There's, for some people, there's really repercussions for sharing this. And we watched in a previous discussion, one of your films, where you shared with the viewers afterwards at a Q&A that you basically almost lost your job as a result of this.
Yeah.
And so there is still, unfortunately, a stigma associated with different types of mental illness. So thank you for sharing. And I shared this book. We're sharing it with people at the Keweenaw Storytelling Center. And we had somebody come in last week who picked up a book, and their son has bipolar disorder. So it's nice that we're making some progress where people are openly discussing this. And we hope that through discussing your story, we can help some other people. So thank you with that. And how did you come to decide to write this book?
Well, it started off having a background in the arts. My family is made out of all artists. My father, Goh Po Sing, is a Singapore literary pioneer, poet, novelist, and playwright. And he wrote the first Singaporean novel and wrote the first Singaporean play. And my mom edited all his 10 books. She was an editor. And they worked together throughout his life. And all my brothers are artists. So I almost didn't want to admit that I was a poet and a writer because there was so much competition in the family. I kind of kept it hidden, but when I was diagnosed with bipolar mood disorder, which I prefer to call manic depression because it more accurately describes my lived experience with the condition, the highs and lows of mania and psychosis and depression, of the roller coaster ride of the manic depressive journey. But basically, what happened is I was initiated into the spoken word slam community of Vancouver and was taken under the wing by seasoned spoken word slam artists and nurtured and kind of mentored. And it really was a decisive day when I was invited by my friend Lori Bricker, who was a spoken word artist, to an event called Manner of Speaking at the Church of Pointless Hysteria. It's not a real church, but it's kind of like an artist loft where they went through all these kind of artistic happenings, film screenings, kind of art installations, music, spoken word. And the Manner Speaking event was the creme de la creme of the spoken word scene. And overnight, I inherited a whole constellation, a whole family of spoken word artists that became my dearest and closest friends. And my father comes from a different generation, a different ilk of writers like T.S. Eliot. And so I was exposed to the oral poetry, the spoken word storytelling. And through that, I found my voice, And I began to write these stories as a form of self-therapy as they were happening to me. We read the book, they're told in first person present tense, largely because this book was written over the course of 28 years. And it was almost like a journal, but I don't consider my work art therapy. I consider it a work of art in its own right. Because sometimes when people say, oh, art is therapy, it's kind of seen as like disabled arts, which has both positive and negative connotations, It's somehow lesser than legitimate art or legitimate literature. But it was written over the course of 28 years, and basically I'm finding that whenever I did spoken word or slam poetry, people in the audience would come up to me and one or two people would say, I have bipolar mood disorder, or I suffer from schizophrenia, or I suffer from PTSD, or anxiety and depression, and they will open up to me. And oftentimes I'd sell them my chapbooks. Half the time I gave it to them because they had no money, and they became my closest friends. And if they say 1 in 4 Canadians or 1 in 4 people in their lifetime will experience a mental health crisis, that's 1 in 4, it's about 25% of the population, which is not an insignificant demographic. And if you don't live with it yourself, you have a family, a husband, a wife, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a sibling, a relative, a co-worker, a friend. No one's lives are left untouched by mental illness.
And
I'll read a few excerpts. A lot of them are quite short, so they're almost like short stories. This one's called Joy. July 1st, 1990. I am at a house party in Ottawa when I meet a woman named Joy. It's a joy to meet you, Joy. She beams at me, then says, I'm manic depressive. The conversation ends before it really began. Not knowing what to say, I make an excuse. I have to call my girlfriend. A lie. I avoid her all night, staying upstairs while she waits below, lost in the party. She reminds me of a dog I once had when I was 8 years old. He was always happy to see me, jumping up and licking my face. Overwhelmed by his affection, I fled upstairs, afraid to come down. Eventually, my mother lost her patience. Okay, we'll give him away to the SPCA. She made me accompany her. I carried the dog in my arms. He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. He spoke to me, "Don't leave me." When we arrived at the SPCA, I said, "Mom, I've changed my mind. I want to keep him." "No," she replied. "After all the trouble you've caused me dragging me all the way here, you don't deserve a dog." This is how I would come to feel every time I was led back to the psych ward, an obedient dog crying to God, "Don't leave me."
No, wow. What a powerful way to start this story. I mean, it brings up so many things. First, your realization, I mean, you put yourself in the other person's place immediately. And then you have to later come to terms with that you have kind of the same mental illness.
Mhm.
How did you come to think about that? I mean, was that in real time, or like back when you wanted to start this book, you thought about this incident when you were the other in the story?
Well, can I read you the original version? Uh, that had a different ending,
Sure.
which even is more pronounced. Okay, okay. "I'm sorry, Joy. I was afraid. I didn't understand until I too was diagnosed manic depressive 8 years ago on Valentine's Day of all days. I used to believe that people with mental illness were weak and felt sorry for themselves. Now it hurts hearing the same words coming out of other people's mouths. Yeah, they just enjoy being depressed and lying in bed all day long." I almost punched my cousin when I heard him say this. He doesn't know that people with mental illness have to be stronger, braver, and more street smart just to get through the day. You have to be a survivor if your life is 10 times worse than Job's. So be careful what you say, for what you really fear is, if you dig deep enough, we are all crazy. Only you try to hide it. Take 2 steps backward and fall into the abyss. Reality is, we are all standing on the edge of the precipice. So be wary of what you say, for one day you might find yourself in my shoes, the victim of your own prejudices.
Hmm. So what made you decide to eliminate that from the final?
It was working with my editor. They thought, instead of spelling it out,
Yeah.
leaving it to the imagination.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked it, because that's all in there, you know, that you putting it in there, that you come to this realization. And I mean, it was really interesting that you had those experiences. It's sort of, in some ways, in some way it served to soften what you might experience later on in your life.
Mhm.
You know, that being on the, you know, other end of it, maybe you gain some more understanding. So that was, you met Joy in 1990.
Yeah, there's Canada Day actually in Ottawa.
Okay. So what, and then when were you diagnosed?
Valentine's Day 1993, I was arrested by 8 police officers for creating a disturbance in a church.
Mm. And you write about that in the book,
Yep.
and it's so interesting because the way that you saw things in your mind, what you were doing, it made perfect sense.
Yeah,
You know, you can almost justify, like, well, that's not crazy. I mean, that's is it any more crazy? I mean, it seems like you're playing that there's a very fine line
yeah,
between what you believe, what you perceive as your reality, even in a church where a lot of it is people's faith, which
mhm,
is not always based on a fact, but it's based on what people perceive to be true, and they believe it to be true internally. And so it's interesting. Did you, I mean, you had this experience, but it must not be lost on you as the author that these two things are working together: people's faith, um, and what's their perception of reality, and your perception of reality. Who's to say the reality that is legitimate?
Oftentimes, when somebody is going through an episode, whether it be a manic, psychotic, or depressive episode, an outsider looking, witnessing the person going through it would think that person's crazy. Their strange behavior or strange, bizarre behavior comes across to them as frightening and scary. But to the person experiencing it, there is a logic which isn't rational logic, but it's crazy wisdom. It's almost the kind of logic that you would have in, say, lucid dreaming or dream logic, where in your dreams you see signs and symbols and metaphors and visions that make sense to only you and you yourself and no one else. And you can interpret it and understand it. But that thread, that line of logic is lost to everyone else who sees it as just strange, bizarre, and frightening behavior, you know? I think one thing that I tried to do with both the book and the film, The Day My Cat Saved My Life, was to give the reader and the viewer of the film an insight into an insider's experience of madness, to make people understand what madness looks like from an experiential level, not just the visions and hallucinations, but that it makes sense to the person going through it, even though it doesn't make sense to anyone else, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I call this, I know there are elements of this book that come across as a bit fantastical or even fictional or just outlandish to, you know, fact is stranger than fiction. My way of writing, they might, people might think I'm employing a literary device like magic realism, the surrealist kind of hyper real, you know, imaginary worlds that people inhabit in Latin American literature, and borrowing from that. But I've coined a new term called manic realism, where basically the hypomanic, manic, psychotic, and depressive episodes, the auditory and visual hallucinations, and the visions that I experience are akin to magic realism. I'm calling it manic realism. So I'm showing those in internal states, the inward states of kind of altered states of consciousness of those what can be construed as mental illness, but the person comes across as either a spiritual awakening. That's why it says the original logline of the book was a manic depressive man struggles to discern the difference between mental health breakdowns and spiritual breakthroughs. And there's always that fine line. Is he having a breakdown, a mental breakdown, or is he having a spiritual breakthrough? It's really a, flip side of the yin yang duality, you know.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the film, and we have that. Is this a good time to share that? Maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, here we go. I will hope I can make it all work.
I'm standing on the rooftop patio of my parents' apartment in the new millennium, staring across the skyline at the gray cityscape, lost in a haze of pollution, listening to the city drone. Feel like I haven't slept for a century. I'm 30, but I feel 1,000 years old. Dying to sleep, chloroform myself into oblivion, while the rest of the world is buzzing busy at work. A new house is being erected. I see it day by day, piece by piece, plank by plank from the foundation up to the roof. The new model house for the 21st century. It dominates the smaller, older houses, reminding me I will never own my own home, have my own family, a wife and kids like normal people. I see an escalator descending and ascending from heaven. The cogwheels turn and churn in a madness of productivity. And I'm not riding on it, and I'm not riding on it. The cast iron heart of the city pounds. Ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. Driving a million iron nails into my head as the day grinds away, oblivious to my existence. Being mentally ill is a full-time job, but you wouldn't know it. All I hear is the noise of construction, drilling, hammering, buzzing, sawing. Vultures circle, casting shadows over me, waiting for me to cave in. But I'm not done living yet! I shut my ears, but it's coming from inside my head. The voices of the city mocking me.
Get a job!
Get a job!
Get a
Get a
job!
job! Useless welfare bum!
Freeloader! Leech!
Get off your
lazy
lazy
ass
ass
and work!
and work!
I stumble, nearly fall down the stairs. The day is blindingly cheerful. I stagger like a drunk down the back alley towards that house. I'm not going to be beaten down. I won't be defeated. God's thick finger whacks me and whacks me and whacks me, tossing me around like a helpless puppet. He is a merciless drill sergeant barking in my ear.
Idle hands are the work of the devil.
The bastard's doing this to make me strong. I'll show him. I march towards the construction site, looking for the foreman, rolling up my sleeves. I demand.
Hey, buddy, you can't come this way. Get out of here.
Hey, give me a job. Your hardest job. A slave and sweat harder than 1,000 men. Give me a job. I won't take no for an answer. Give me back my life. I hear a meow. I turn and see my cat Tarim. An iridescent shaft of light pierces my soul. She's in a panic, running to me, coming to save me. She rubs against me, hungry for affection, shaking with fear and terror.
Don't leave me all alone in that crazy house.
She rubs and rubs against me until gradually I feel the numbness give way and slowly Shanti, 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 hush, hush, shh, shh. Slowly I feel human again. I pick her up and hug her fiercely. I am a balloon flapping in the wind. She is my anchor. I can feel her heart beating as I turn and walk back home. She's holding on to me and won't let me go.
Nice. Nice. And congratulations, Kagan, because I've heard this has been making the festival circuit and recently was in a couple different festivals. What, Tokyo was one?
It's been 4 festivals. The first festival we got into is the Mentor Filmless Film Festival, which I highly recommend people attend now because it's on for 1 month. It's a free online festival. My film was featured there last year. It premiered for the first, made its world premiere. It was at the Mental Health Suicide Awareness Film Festival. Most recently, it was it won Best Short Film at the Gladiator Film Festival in Istanbul, Turkey. And it was just recently got an honorable mention in the Best Film, Short Film category in the main competition of the Tokyo International Short Film Festival. So,
well, congratulations. And, you know, storytelling is such a wonderful medium, filmmaking, that you can reach so many different people, so many different cultures are experiencing this, and we can all relate to it. I can especially relate to it. I mean, this doesn't seem too far-fetched for me. I mean, I went after a person like with a weed whacker. I mean, I was driven crazy by a weed whacker or no, a leaf blower. The same, the same thing. They were going on for 3 hours, and I, you know, it just set me off on like a rampage. So, and I had to move from my house because of, you know, noise pollution. So I get that. I mean, this is, but when did you first, I mean, I know you weren't diagnosed till 93, but is this something that, you know, you feel that you were born, that's been with you your entire life, or did it materialize?
no, but it just came literally out of the blue in 1993. I think I might have had a propensity of it because I had some strange and eccentric, not so much behavior, but ideas. But I just thought that was just being part of being a bohemian artist, you know. Like I used to associate with, I kind of almost, I met a street artist named Bugsy, who was a bit of a trickster and a surrogate father figure. And he took me under his wing and taught me how to live off the streets for less than $1 a day. I was dressed like a street kid. And the both of us would go like, you know, almost like self-appointed preachers and hand out stale deal muffins found in a dumpster to, or from a bakery to street kids, and almost like being fishers of men and stuff like that. And yeah, he was a genius as an artist, but also quite eccentric and quite crazy. And I think his craziness was contagious, and it triggered my episodes, you know. That's my own personal theory. I don't know if any doctor would support that, but
And when was that happening then? That was happening
night.
prior to the diagnosis then?
prior to the diagnosis, yeah.
Okay. Is there another excerpt you'd like to share with us?
Sure. Let's see. Inukshuk, July 1996. As I languish in my bedroom downstairs, Dad wrestles his own demons upstairs. Major depression takes hold of him. I rouse myself from bed to accompany him to St. Paul's, where he will receive electroconvulsive therapy. Together, we walk down the antiseptic fluorescent lit corridors. Corridors I walked on my own as a patient months earlier. Today, we keep each other company as we wander through the battlefield of our fractured minds. I feel him tremble at a pace unlike the steady shakes caused by his Parkinson's. Sensing my concern, he reassures me that treatment will help him. It's not as barbaric as the movies make it out to be, he says unconvincingly. I wait for him in a puke purple room on a sticky plastic seat. I wait too long. Eventually, a doctor brings him to me. You had one hell of an impressive convulsion, he compliments Dad. I look at his frail body standing before me, finding it difficult to believe that moments before he was strapped down, teeth gritting the bit hard so he would not bite off his tongue. 1,000 kilowatts of electricity jolted through his 40-watt body. Afterwards, Dad and I walked in silence down Davie Street toward English Bay. His body is weak and our minds are tired. The bay holds the mist tight. We approach the Inukshuk monument, granite slabs of rock arranged to form a mighty statue of man, a beacon of hope to those who are lost in the vast featureless tundra. It towers over us, arms reaching out to embrace the sea like a vast father. The sky breaks and the wind and rain pelt the Inukshuk, my father and me. I wonder, how much pain can a person endure? Dad, I say, you are not alone.
Wow. Pretty rough things to go through. Did you think that, did it help? First of all, how did your folks feel about your diagnosis? How did they handle that?
I think it was pretty devastating, but my father suffered from major depression. There's something in the story that's missing, is that he was actually feeling suicidal because of his major depression. And, you know, even though a lot of people have misgivings, or, you know, ECT or electroconvulsive therapy is quite controversial, my father was convinced that it actually did help him. It kind of jolted him out of his negative headspace and thoughts of self-harm and suicide, you know.
And then having a son
Mhm.
with a mental illness, did he feel some sense of responsibility to you at this time, or was that
Well,
out of himself?
my father and I, and actually both my parents were my best friends. I mean, I almost see my father and I as not just best friends, but war veterans. You know, fighting a world war after world war after world war on our own heads, and walking down the antiseptic fluorescent corridors, you know, of St. Paul's Hospital time and again, you know, as mental health patients. And there's a bond that happens between survivors, consumer survivors, especially the family members, and made us very strong, very tight. And I was very close to both my parents to the point I think we had a bit of a codependent relationship, which was healthy in some ways and not so healthy in other ways. I kind of felt that I was almost not immature, but that my growth was stunted because of my illness. It made me dependent on other people.
Mm.
And my parents were pretty much the only ones that didn't really abandon me. My girlfriend abandoned me, my friends abandoned me, and the people would literally cross the street and to avoid me because I was a downer. You know, my depression wasn't made me no fun anymore. So my parents were my primary caregivers, and I also was their caregivers too, caregiver too, because my father suffered from Parkinson's and major depression, and my mother late in life was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. So there's this triangle, a triumvirate, a trinity of weary warriors, you know, solid, unshakable, and strong, as the three of us. I mean, I have other siblings, but a lot of them were elsewhere in Montreal, Toronto, Mexico, or England, you know.
Mhm.
During the times they witnessed some of that, but for the most part it was the three of us, you know.
And you were diagnosed at what age?
23.
23. So really young,
Yeah.
and taking all that in. So I could see where that would be in some way. You have, you know, as you say, a buddy that has gone through this together, but it is a hard thing to navigate. Now, at one point in time, you're their child, and then you're switching to helping them with their illnesses.
Mhm.
So, what do you say for somebody that's been diagnosed? How are you doing now? What can you say that's encouraging? Is there help?
Yes, there is help. The turning point for me, can I read one small section here?
Sure, sure.
It's towards it, not that I want to spoilers, but I think it's important. Let's see. Advocating for myself, February 2007. My eldest brother Kasan has come to visit from England. I haven't seen him in several years. I feel obliged to update him about the living hell I have suffered. I regale him with accounts of the numerous manic, psychotic, and depressive episodes I've endured. It's been 7 years since my last visit to St. Paul's, but in my warped perception, I still focus on it as if it were yesterday. I use it to define my character. When I finish assaulting him with my horror stories in the psych ward, my brother asks, "Why do you define yourself? Why do you define who you are by your suffering?" I am taken aback by his question. I'm expecting the usual reaction I get from friends and family, glazed over resignation and helplessness, or sympathy and pity. Kasan, on the contrary, will not let me wallow. Instead, he dishes out a fair measure of tough love. I normally would have been defensive, but my brother's question disarms me because it comes from a place of genuine caring, compassion, and concern. I realize he is right. I'm actually taking pride in being a victim and survivor of the mental health system, blaming societies for my misfortune. I am proud of having survived and suffered the way a veteran is proud of having fought in the Great War, wearing his medals on his chest as proof of his bravery and valor. Except the Great War I have been fighting is in my head. The Great War I've been fighting is with myself. The Buddha said attachment is the cause of suffering. In my case, I have become attached to my suffering. I've been living by the motto, I suffer, therefore I am. I was institutionalized and inadvertently accepted the label of professional mental patient, and I'm sick of it. There is, in fact, much to be proud of. I focus so much on the horror, but I have been making steady improvements. On this night, I vow to break my attachment to the suffering of my past. I choose to create a different narrative.
Wow, very good.
So that was kind of like the turning point. There were a number of different things that were instrumental, basically realizing that making my health my first and most important priority was the turning point in everything going in a better direction. Because before I would put my artistic practice or my girlfriends or my friends or my family ahead of myself. And my mental health was imagine a train, a long train, and my mental health is the last train in the caboose, at the back of the train, pushing the rest of the carriages forward with great traction, friction, and resistance. But if you put the train, your mental health at the head of the train as the engine pulling the train along, everything goes smoothly and with ease. Things that once were impossible became possible again. So that's why I always, if anybody asks me for advice in terms of mental health, I don't advise about medications, talk to your doctor, psychiatrist, but making your health your first and most important priority above everything else. You might be doing the same things, but it's your priorities and your perspective and how you view the world and what you prioritize in your life is not just your health, but your mental health. Things that once were impossible became possible. I started to not just write and publish and make films, and I got a job. I've been working since 2009 at the Kettle Friendship Society, which is a mental health organization where I used to be a client. And I got married. I've been happily married for over 8 years to the love of my life, Julie Kagan Goh. And this is a photo of us where I proposed to her in a hot air balloon.
Oh. Nice.
So, yeah. And
is that a drawing of you two together too?
a drawing?
I thought the painting might be of the redhead on the floor.
Oh no, that's a painting by a friend of mine.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was the couple portrait, but it's really, that's so nice to see, because I have seen your wife Julia on your post, and to know that there is help for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how hard was it for you? Because in these manic episodes where you were super creative, like doing, a poem every day for 40 days, and just and you felt like you were getting a lot done and being super creative. Were you afraid? I know some people have been afraid of like even taking medication. They're worried about harming that part of themselves. Was that a concern for you?
I think initially I was resistant to medication the way, people writers erroneously think that they need to be on drugs, recreational drugs, whether it's peyote or mescaline or DMT or psychedelics to be able to write, or they have to drink alcohol to be able to be a good writer, which is not true. It's not the doorway to creativity. Neither is your mental states of, psychosis, and it might give you insights. But my best writer, basically what I do now is like if I become hypomanic, if hypomania could be bottled or made into a pill, it would be the most sought after pill because it makes you charismatic and makes you incredibly creative and incredibly productive. I call it the genius mode. But the thing is, like, if you're on that too long, it becomes mania. And then the happiness, the so-called feel-good vibe you have, the happiness is brittle. It's like, it's unsustainable. It's like a stallion stampeding across a frozen lake. Any moment you could go and break through the ice and drown, So, or another metaphor is like Icarus flying too close to the sun. Trying to embrace the sun, become one with the sun, and your wings melt and you plummet to the dark night of the soul, which is depression. And it takes a long time to recover from that. So when I feel hypomania, I ride it the way a surfer rides a wave and on the sea. I let it come and I let it go. I let it recede. I let myself come down. I don't chase the high the way a drug addict or an alcoholic or somebody addicted to substances or any kind of form of addiction chases a high. I don't chase the high. I let it come and go, ebb and flow, and ride the waves, but I don't try to induce it. I don't try to sustain it. I don't try to use I don't use any recreational drugs or alcohol to sustain a high. I am gifted with what I think is like a photographic memory. Plus, I write the stories as they're happening. But my best writing is when I'm sober and lucid and sane, because I'm able to translate those non-ordinary states of consciousness of mania, psychosis, depression, and make them understandable. My friend Bugsy, the street artist, said, if you go waltzing around like you're Jesus Christ, they're going to crucify you or kill you. If you act like you're the king of the hill, like, JFK, the Kennedys, John Lennon, or Martin Luther King, they'll take you down, they'll kill you. Instead, put it in your art, put it into your writing, put it into your films, put it into your poetry, put it into your music. And people will think you're talented and genius, you're able. That's the gift of the shaman. Taking something which almost kills you or is an illness and using the alchemy of art to make it something transformative and healing for others. Just to give you an example, my barber, I'm disclosing the names not to out them, but he gave me permission to do so because they're supportive of mental health. My barber's name is Muhammad Jassim, and he bought a copy of my book, Surviving Samsara, and he was raving about it to his best friend who suffers from depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, and his name is Ali Fadel. And he accompanied Ali to Chaka's Indigo to buy a copy of the book. And Ali said he's never read a book for enjoyment or read a book in his life, and he read it in one sitting. And he said that the book changed his life. He realized that he had gone off his meds for anxiety because he felt fine. He felt normal. And the reason why he's feeling normal is because he was on the meds. When we got off the meds, he began to downward spiral and things turned out bad and substance abuse began to happen. So he said the book convinced him to go back on his meds and seek out a professional psychiatrist. And now he's back on track and stable. And, you know, in some ways, this book has become a source of community outreach, you know. And another thing that I talk about in the book, which was the real turning point, is that I discovered something called WRAP, W-R-A-P. The acronym stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan, and was developed by Mary Ellen Copeland, who suffered from fibromyalgia and bipolar mood disorder. And she conducted a survey interviewing or sending out questionnaires to thousands of mental health consumer survivors asking for their advice. And she correlated all this information and created something called WRAP, which are basically wellness strategies in crisis prevention, crisis intervention, and post-crisis recovery for mental health. And basically you have things like a daily maintenance plan, which are things you do every day to stay well, the baseline that you'd never miss, like eating 3 square meals a day, getting 8 hours sleep, getting some exercise, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, the basics. If you begin to deviate from that, you identify your triggers, and you have a wellness toolkit, such as, you know, going for a walk in nature, playing with a pet, talking to a friend you can confide in, having a bubble bath, and listening to music, going, you know. And then there's a crisis plan, which is basically almost like an advance directive, where you nominate 5 supporters. They could be friends and family that you trust, and you give them directives of what kind of treatments you're willing to undergo and what treatments you're not willing to undergo. For some people, they say, I will never want to undergo ECT or forced restraints or straitjackets. Or these are the medications that agree with me, and these are the medications I have an adverse reaction to. It might not be listened to, but at least you've expressed your wishes.
Mhm.
And then there's a post-crisis recovery plan, where after you say come back from the psych ward, while you're in the psych ward, you nominate somebody to look after your plants, look after your pet, pay your bills, your rent, help you with laundry, you know, buy groceries for you, stay with you for 2 weeks after you come back. And it's a short-term plan, which you're weaned off until you're back on your feet. And that WRAP plan has been used not just for bipolar or mental illness, but for Parkinson's disease, HIV/AIDS, PTSD, diabetes. I mean, it has multiple applications. And in my estimation, Mary Ellen Copeland should be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for the work she's doing in mental health. You know?
And thank you for all that you're doing. I mean, this book is not surviving Samsara. Where is it available? Besides, we do have a few copies left at the Keweenaw Storytelling Center, but where can people purchase this?
You can get it on Amazon. And if you go to the Kagan Press website, it's spelled CAITLINPRESS, and look up under the book the author or the book section under Surviving Samsara, and there's an American distributor that's distributing the book, so you can get it through an American distributor.
Well, it's not only for somebody that is suffering from a mental illness, but all their friends and family and loved ones. And it really creates so much awareness and understanding. And it is a easy, fluid read. It's not because it's in 3rd grade letter writing. It's just written so well. The writing is great, Kagan, on this. It's just easy to read and really puts you in that space, so we can, you know, understand where you were at, but also how other people may be thinking. So I thank you so much for sharing this, and we hope sometime in the future we can have you back. So when your next book comes out.
Thank you.
But we'll also direct people on our website, realpeoplemedia.org. We do have links, and I'll make sure we have links to all of your website and media. We have information about you at the realpeoplemedia.org page. For the
And I'll send you the link to the publisher's website where the American distributor can be found for the book.
All right, and I hope we can continue to get more copies at the Keweenaw Storytelling Center and share them. It's a great read. Thank you so much for taking your time today to talk to me, and best wishes, and thanks for what you do.
Happy Canadian Thanksgiving. I don't know when the American Thanksgiving is, but we just had.
Oh, you just had yours. Oh, okay. Well, happy Thanksgiving to all our Canadian friends. Ours is the fourth Thursday in November. So,
Okay.
and we did have Indigenous People Day this week. We're celebrating that here. So,
Okay.
thank you, Kagan. Have a
Thank
great time. Bye-bye.